Okay, we're going to open this meeting. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, welcome. All right, this open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical locations. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, you can dial 1-408-650-3123 with access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at www.global.gotomeeting.com /join/235-235-861. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body who are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Sorry, we're good there? Okay. Okay, we will now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, I do see we have some public comments. For those residents that have signed up for public comments on 16 Perry Place, we're going to hold that until the actual presentation comes up, just so your comments will be spoken at the appropriate time. Otherwise, we have Daniel Largess.
Good evening, Board. I was wondering if we have an update on the COVID money for the police and fire. I mean, we're talking $300,000 that could be distributed to the police and fire. And 3 weeks ago, I asked about it, and you had said you were working on something. Do we have an update?
I know that, not tonight, but through the town manager, I know that we were looking at other communities, what they did, how they came up with equitable solutions on where to give out these ARPA funds.
Between 1,000 and 4,500 per emergency personnel.
Understood. We're looking at other departments as well, and again, it's being worked on. We'll have an update probably in the next few meetings, but nothing's come back to us for review at this point in time. It hasn't been forgotten, I can assure you.
As I estimated, $3,000 per individual, you're looking at $300,000 out of $5 million? Was that what the total was, $5 million?
Are you talking?
How much COVID money the town got?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think that's a really bad number for those people. I mean, we had another fire at Dale Ave yesterday.
Yep.
Those guys are putting their life on the line every single day. We're sitting here right now, and they're probably doing something.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, hopefully nothing ever happens to any of them, and I pray to God we never have another Tarantino situation. Those guys are there. You pick up the phone, they come.
Yep.
I want to see them recognized.
Absolutely. Just keep watching the meetings. We will be addressing that at some point in the future.
I'll keep showing up for you.
Thanks, Dan.
I love your smile. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public hearings and presentations. We have presentation of a proclamation to R. Scott Roberts for his heroic actions on July 31st, 2022. Do you want to introduce it? Yeah. Chief Lemon, do you want to address this matter at all, or? Sure. Okay.
So, members of the board, we're here tonight for an incident regarding an incident that happened in July. On behalf of the Auburn Police Department, I'm writing to express my sincere appreciation for your actions the morning of July 31st, 2022 at the Shell gas station at 611 Southbridge Street. This letter is addressed to Mr. R. Scott Roberts of 502 Rochdale Street in Auburn, who's in the back of the room, probably, there he is, he's raised his hand for us. Investigation by this department showed that your decision to intervene in the ongoing violent assault by a man upon two innocent female clerks likely prevented them from receiving even more serious injuries. During your interview with Detective Sergeant Lamoureux, it was clear that you were concerned for your own safety and did not want to enter the store to get involved, but you did so anyways because, quote, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night, end quote, if you did not. This selfless, community-minded mentality is the backbone of a peaceful society. The police cannot be everywhere, and it's incumbent upon all citizens to protect one another. Thank you for doing what you could do that morning to stop the attack from continuing. We also appreciate that you assisted the responding officers in accessing the store security footage. That timely assistance allowed the officers to quickly obtain invaluable identification information of the subject. For that, I thank you, Scott. I'd also like to recognize the two victims involved in this case, Tracy and Cassandra. While I'm thankful for Mr. Roberts for interrupting this incident, also want to express my appreciation to Cassie and her mother, Tracy. The women were at work very early that morning and subjected to unprovoked violence. We have flowers for the women and hope that they are doing well in their recovery. If they'd like to come up here. So, Mr. Roberts, I have a civilian service award from the Auburn Police Department, and I'd like to give you a patch. If you don't have a patch collection, it's a good time to start one, but I'm honored to give you this, and thank you very much for your service to your community.
Mr. Roberts, on behalf or in light of your heroic efforts, the Board of Selectmen has issued a proclamation. So whereas the Board of Selectmen wishes to recognize and acknowledge individuals who have served their community in a meritorious manner, and whereas Auburn resident R. Scott Roberts exhibited such service in a courageous manner on the morning of July 31st, 2022. Whereas R. Scott Roberts intervened in an ongoing assault by a man upon two female clerks at the Shell gas station at 611 Southbridge Street in Auburn, despite the risk to his personal safety. And whereas the Select Board believes it is important to recognize such outstanding bravery for all citizens to acknowledge and emulate. And now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Auburn, Massachusetts, do hereby recognize and honor R. Scott Roberts and congratulate him for his heroic actions on July 31st. Thank you, Chief. And we further have presentation of proclamation to Tony Pellegrino to acknowledge his years of service as CERT leader.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm honored to be here this evening to publicly recognize on behalf of the Town of Auburn and the Emergency Services Dr. Tony Pellegrino. The timing of this recognition couldn't be better a day after 9/11, as CERT teams across the United States were developed actually as a direct result of the tragedy of 9/11 in 2001 to have a citizen emergency response team be put into place. Dr. Pellegrino stepped up 21 years ago and has led the CERT team that entire time until he just recently retired from the position this past summer. So Dr. Pellegrino, with just a little bit of arm twisting, is here this evening. He is a man who does not like the spotlight. He does not like the limelight. I told him too bad for tonight, because he certainly deserves it. But he has diligently worked behind the scenes for many, many years, putting together and organizing a tremendous amount of volunteer citizens that perform admirably on our CERT team on an annual basis. So, Dr. Pellegrino, if you could come to the microphone. On behalf of the town of Auburn, we would like to present Dr. Tony Pellegrino in recognition of your 20 years of outstanding leadership as CERT Director for the town of Auburn on this day, September 12th, 2022. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Further issued another proclamation, whereas the Auburn Select Board wishes to recognize and acknowledge individuals for their service to the community, and whereas Dr. Tony Pellegrino has been a longtime volunteer in the town of Auburn as a member of the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, and whereas the CERT program team members are trained to provide initial responses and treatment to their neighborhoods during emergencies like hurricanes, tornadoes, and have participated in the evacuation and sheltering of fire and flooding victims, and whereas Dr. Tony Pellegrino has been a CERT leader since 2007. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Auburn, Massachusetts, hereby recognize and honor Dr. Tony Pellegrino and congratulate him for his years of service as the town's CERT leader. Congratulations.
A couple of things. I'm stepping down as leader, and Kathy Stone's taking over, but I'm still going to be a team member. So you're going to still see me around the streets and that kind of thing. But I want to thank the board for the recognition. I appreciate it. Also, what I want to do is thank the police and fire departments. They are the ones that give us support and back us up and have taught us to do the job and do it right. So they should get the appreciation and recognition that they deserve for this as well. But most of all, the team members. There are about 30 team members who actually do the work, do the sweat and tears and everything else in any kind of weather, and they're the ones who really need the recognition, and this all goes to them. Thank you, guys.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 3C, presentation on Constitution Week by Deborah Nurse.
Good evening, and thank you, Chairman Wren and members of the board. My name is Deborah Nurse, and I am the Constitution Week Chairman of the Colonel Timothy Bigelow Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. Our chapter is named for Timothy Bigelow, who was born on Packagug Hill in what is now known as Auburn in 1739. In 1773, he was a member of the Committee of Correspondence. He was chosen as the commander of the Minutemen of Worcester. He marched at the Battle of Lexington and Concord and volunteered for the expedition to Quebec. It was on that expedition that he was captured by the British and was a prisoner of war for 8 months. Promptly being released, he re-entered service. He served in major battles and was made a full colonel. After 8 years in the Army, he returned to Worcester, ill and had difficulty resuming his business. He was remanded to debtor's prison, where he died in 1790 at the age of 51. His monument now stands on the Worcester Common and is beautiful to see. I recommend you all, if you are on the Worcester Common, to go see it. Tonight, I would like to recognize the celebration of Constitution Week, an annual celebration signed into law by President Dwight Eisenhower in 1956. September 17th, 2022, marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States by the Constitutional Convention. Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. I would like to thank you for recognizing Constitution Week in Auburn. The Auburn Public Library will be educating the community by signage, a book display, and relevant handouts. Our chapter will be providing each school in the town of Auburn posters of the U.S. Constitution. And I would like to present you with a copy of the preamble.
Okay, moving on to thank you very much. Sorry. Moving on to public hearings, we have R&B Auto Sales Motor Vehicle Class 2 license at 16 Montclair Drive in Auburn, Massachusetts. Do we have the applicant? Attorney Bergman?
After they speak, there's one more planning board, I don't know what's to sit in there, it's playing live on TV. So that's it.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you. Attorney Morris Bergman on behalf of Mr. Bianculli and the application. This has gone through zoning board, planning board, and I believe we've responded to all the concerns of all the various bodies that have asked and inquired about what Mr. Bianculli intends to do there.
I'm sorry, Attorney Bergman. I got caught up in these presentations. We need to open this public hearing first. My apologies.
And then speak and have them speak.
Do we have a motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. All set, you can proceed. If you could just speak into the microphone.
Sure. I should be practiced by now, so I should go quicker. Attorney Morris Bergman on behalf of the applicant. We've gone through the zoning board here and the planning board. I believe the questions have been responded to, hopefully satisfactorily. I think there's been a recommendation of the planning board to allow the application. We're certainly here and willing to answer any other questions anybody might have. It's essentially a difficult property to do much with, given where it is. Mr. Bianculli's been a town resident forever, and I think he's got a good reputation here to follow through on what his commitments he's made to the various boards are, and we're confident that'll be a successful business and a good use of the property that otherwise probably wouldn't be able to be developed in the same manner. I didn't really recall any opposition at the zoning board level. I don't recall any opposition at the planning board level from neighbors. Obviously, you're free to inquire, and hopefully you'll agree that it's a good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions from board members? No? Any questions from town administration?
We're all set,
All
thanks.
set? Okay. I'll need a motion to close the hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. And do we have a motion to approve or deny?
I'll make a motion to approve the license, provided all applicable requirements of the state, town, and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and that the conditions recommended by the development, the DCG, are placed on the license.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Congratulations,
Okay,
gentlemen.
thank you for your time. Thank you.
And members of the community, if there's any, if there's people outside or if there's any sitting room issues, the planning board room is open, and this meeting is being televised in the planning room. And we do have a few seats right up back here as well. Okay. All right, now we have agenda item 3E, public meeting on Whitney Street Home Builders LLC for a local initiative project for housing development at 16 Perry Place. Good evening.
James Van Casa, Street Home Builders. Steve just went to go grab his glasses.
Okay.
And I'm James Tatro from Azimuth Land Design here for Whitney Street Home Builders.
You may proceed.
So, through the chair, if I can, we had a meeting, is my mic on? Can't tell. If anyone can hear me. We had a meeting 3 weeks ago, I believe, at the Board of Selectmen, and we asked for additional information from the developer. that information, some of that information came in on Friday, and that is in the board's packets. I'll try not to turn and look at the board, because then you can't hear me. So that should be in the board packet as well. So I think it would be helpful if you could go through that additional information, which
Sure.
is some of what the board is looking for, and then we'd like to just be able to ask a couple of questions with regard to the project itself. I think that's how you wanted to run it, and then at the end have time for public comment.
That's
Is
true,
that how-
that's
okay.
correct.
Sure. Again, I'm James Tatro from Azimuth Land Design for Whitney Street Home Builders. And since the last meeting, we're still working on some of the information. The traffic engineer is preparing a much more comprehensive study which addressed some of the items that the town planner specifically called for, additional intersections. And we're still, I apologize, this is failing on my part, haven't got to the full auto turn thing showing that the town's 252-inch wheelbase fire truck can drive through with no issues. That's been my problem dealing with the wonderful auto turn program. But anyways, what we did submit was a revised municipal impacts analysis, which looked in greater depth at the, and I think in a fairly conservative fashion, at the town demands of this development that there would be in other factors. Police and fire were looked at simply on a per household basis, that the cost at present for so many households is a certain amount. So for this many more, assuming the same ratio of costs per household, that would be that much more cost. We looked at the number of school-aged children, which again, we believe is a bit conservative, and it also assumes that none of the school-aged children in the project would be doing anything but going to the Auburn school system. Doesn't factor in any possible private school attendance or homeschooling or anything else. But even with all of these conservative assumptions, the net annual basis of the project would be about $470,000 of net revenue to the town. And again, I think that's based on reasonable assumptions, also on the value of the project itself. I think we initially had one figure in which the town planner questioned. We actually revised that, saying that the overall value would be $31 million, which I think is in line with similar projects that the applicant has built and with expected assessing. And again, those assumptions are what drives that net calculation of about $470,000 to the town. So we looked at those, and again, we have not gotten back some of the information that the board is looking for, which the traffic report, we have not got back. My failing, the analysis showing again that the town's largest fire truck passes through without having to back up or three-point. But we are going to get that information to you, and we're pretty confident of not having a particular problem with that. I also want to just touch quickly on one thing. There was as part of this project, in addition to improving about 900 feet of Perry Place, both width and surface, the applicant is working with the Water District to help them achieve a connection to the City of Worcester system, which will provide redundancy and capacity for the town. And I know there was some comment in emails that is, money funds that the applicant is not giving to the town, but is giving specifically to the Water District. But our position, of course, is that benefit derived from those funds of extra capacity and redundancy to the system still benefits the town citizens. Again, whether the entity through which the money first passed was the town or water department, or in this case, a private water district, the eventual recipient and beneficiary are the town citizens. And I don't know if everybody's seen it in the news, but just to see what can happen. Recently, I think it was the capital of Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, had an incident where they were reliant upon especially one pump providing water service to the citizens, and they had an issue with that pump, and now actually a majority of people living in that city have no water service. because they had no redundancy, they had no backup, they had no reserve. And that's the situation essentially that the water district has been trying to remedy, having a backup, having effect redundancy through connection to Worcester. That the reserve, I think, is paying for part of that. The applicant would pay for part of that also. I guess I would just leave it at that. We'll try and take any questions. But we understand we've partially, we think, fulfilled the additional requirements that the board had, and we're still working on the rest.
Thank you. And thank you for the information that was provided to us. We appreciate that. Do we have any questions of the board members at this time? No? Yes?
So you just mentioned a connection to the city of Worcester. That's only for this development, or does that benefit? The Cross Connect will serve that area of town?
Correct, it serves the entire town. It's that when we first broached this issue, we were told to talk to the water district because they believe that they're near their capacity right now. And they told us that in their opinion, that is the situation across town, and that their remedy to that is a proposed connection to the Worcester system to be able to, if one of their pumps went out, one of the couple of wells near 290, for instance, that they would still be able to have capacity in the town, still be able to continuously provide service, and would not somehow have to come up with, I don't know what sort of jerry-rigged situation otherwise. But it's not just for this development. It is for the entire town, but it was to address an ongoing issue that the water district flagged.
So I know you're still waiting on that traffic study. Do you guys have a number of anticipated cars that you guys would expect from this development?
Oh, geez.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a standard internet ITE trip code for multifamily units for how many trips per day. I'll get it wrong, it might be 7.5 trips per day, and 10% of that total, which is around 1,000, 10% in the peak hours.
Any further questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Carpenter?
I just noted my mic wasn't on, so. Through you, Mr. Chairman, the road is being upgraded to subdivision standards. Is the plan to eventually come to town meeting and turn that road over to the town? Has that been forecast?
No.
Steve Van Cassen from the development team, Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. That's a private road, so that could not be put before the town unless we have all the existing abutters all want that to be brought to the town. So we're willing to work with the abutters of the town, whatever way you'd like us to go. We can keep it a private road, or we could make it a public road. It's really up to you. So we're open to that. We do recognize that it's a gravel road section, some of the last part of that road, and it should be upgraded, and we're willing to do that upgrade. So it is working within an existing layout with wetlands on either side and abutters and driveways and houses. It's a little bit more fluid than a standard, like if we're going to do a standard subdivision and everything's wide open, we just go in 50-foot layout and we do the subdivision standard. So generally, when we do improvements to a public way, we get input from the town. So we've had a couple meetings with some of the staff that walk the road there, and we have come up with a couple sketches of what we think would be appropriate for that roadway there. And we're happy to work with either DPW director or your planning board or whoever you designate. That would obviously be part of the ZBA process also. A lot of what we're doing here today would still be brought up before the ZBA. You're not the permitting authority for this process, but we are looking for your support, and that's why we're going through this process. So we would like to do this as a LIP project, as a friendly 40B, and that's why we're here today before you, willing to make adjustments or accommodations to whatever reasonably we could put together and try to work together with you. You know, right, that's a good question. We're going to apologize.
Don't worry about it. You're talking to a politician. We're known for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only concern is as you're upgrading the road, that if it's going to create an expense on the existing folks, you know, obviously they've got a gravel road, they've got a certain degree of expense that they're undertaking when they buy on the road, but obviously with bituminous and other things, that jacks up the price, so that's why I'm asking.
I wouldn't anticipate the abutters to have any expense at all. You mean monetary expense, is that what you're referring to?
You're going to upgrade the road, if I may. However, at some point, the road will degrade if it doesn't become a public road. If it stays private, then I would assume that everybody on that road would be required to chip in.
Oh, yes,
And
absolutely.
so I'm thinking ahead.
Yeah, thinking ahead, well, I like that, but the life expectancy of the road is generally between 20 and 30 years before it moves in the pavement top coat. You're correct, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. I do have just one concern. The title commitment that was issued in the last packet wasn't necessarily persuasive for me. And I just feel it's a point that we need to get right for everybody involved, right? And I know I'm a real estate attorney, but I don't profess to know everything, and I think it's a crucial one. Ms. Jacobson, did you hear back from town council
I
on that, or-
did, through the chair. So we reached out to town council. I know when we met back in January, we had asked about providing proof or documentation that you have the right to develop Perry Place into an access egress for 152 units, and how does that subjugate the rights potentially of the other property owners? And as a result, what the chair is referring to is the section, the excerpt you have given us, I think from the title insurance, that show that you do have the right to pass and repass, as well as to make improvements. But the question that we had for town council, and I reached out to him when you first filed your application a couple of weeks ago, was how do the rights of the property owner, you, supersede the rights of the other abutters who also have that same right? So if there's no agreement from the property owners to do the roadway, what is the legal authority for the developer to proceed? So when I asked that question of town council, and the response back from town council is that, first of all, it's a civil matter. It's not up to the town to make that determination. That is between property owners on a private property. So to be clear, we can't make that determination. But our concern is how can the board make an informed decision about whether to go with an LIP, or whether the ZBA, if it gets to the point, can make informed decisions on conditions if we don't know the basic question, which is how can the developer develop this roadway as an access when there are other private property owners whose deeds may or may not say the same thing. And again, this is a question for an attorney. It could end up being a question that has to be determined by a court. So I guess just to be clear, town council said that we really need to continue to get that kind of information. Maybe you have that information for us, but what I'm hearing, and I know the board is hearing, we're hearing that your attorneys are saying that you have the right to do that. I see your attorney is on the line, so we appreciate it. But we're also hearing from the residents and the other abutters that they also have rights. And our question from the beginning has been, how do you do a development when you don't have the other property owners who have equal rights to their properties? And if they're not on board, how does this proceed? And do you have an agreement with the residents, which I don't believe you do. We know that from some of the concerns that they've raised. And not having such an agreement, how would the board be comfortable going forward making a decision if we don't know that legally you have the right to do that? And again, we can't make that determination, but we need to see the documentation that shows that determination. So through the chair, is that clear?
Yeah.
Our attorney's actually in the Zoom meeting.
Yes, I see him. Attorney Levine is on the call.
I was going to speak, but I forgot.
Sure. Do you want to ask?
Yeah. Attorney Levine, do you want to speak on this matter?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
The volume coming through is a little difficult for me to hear, but I believe the question is, whether we have or the developer has the right to use the road. Is that it in generalities?
Yeah, in generality, I mean, I think I personally can, understand the McKenna case in the terms of rights to pass and repass over a private way, ownership to the center line. As far as, I think to specify it more, was utilities and improvement to the right-of-way when we have others who also have similar rights. That's kind of where I'm.
Well, again, we've given you a copy of a title commitment that gives us the right to pass and repass. And if you have the right, again, most respectfully, if you have the right to pass and repass, you have the right to improve the road, which, again, the statute says, that includes utilities. So, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's asking the question. I'm trying to just convey, our feeling. So, by way of a simple example, if there's, you have a 20-foot right-of-way, it's shown as two parallel lines, and it's in the woods. Well, clearly, but it's in the woods, you clearly have the right to cut the trees down, otherwise the right-of-way becomes illusory. And then, if you have the right to cut the trees down, you have the right to grade and, put down gravel or asphalt or whatever, and you also have the right, to put utilities down. So if there's something more definitive that the board wants us to do, whether it be by a greater legal opinion, referencing case law, I'm comfortable doing that. But, our position, and I think the law clearly is, the right to pass and repass includes the right to improve and the right to include utilities. Now, obviously, if others have the right to pass and repass, then there's a joint right, and, people have to, share the right to use it. But I don't even see that as an issue here, because the applicant is going to improve the right-of-way, which is going to be for the benefit of everyone. The applicant is going to install utilities. I don't see which utilities will also include drainage and things like that. So the abutters are going to get a better road than they have. I'm somewhat at a loss to understand what, and this is respectfully, what we're denying the abutters. I mean, if there's going to be electric in the road perhaps better than there is now. I don't know if there's going to be any other utilities. Drainage is going to be improved. The road is going to be improved in terms of geometry and in terms of paving. So I don't think we're taking away any rights. I think, in fact, we're probably improving it. But I can't say anymore, and I think, I'm fairly comfortable with it. Title companies fairly comfortable with it. And again, most respectfully, and I don't dismiss anybody's questions about this, this is kind of a common thing that happens where you have a right to pass and repass, and you come in and, you build a subdivision road, you build a road that may be eventually taken by the town or remains private.
Thank you, and no offense taken whatsoever. It's just, I know you're not here in the room, but we do have a room full of concerned citizens. So, again, we're asking the questions just so we make sure we get this all right. Other board members, would you be in agreement that Attorney Levine had referenced the statute? He offered a legal opinion letter. I don't want to go spending your money, but would you want to see a legal opinion letter just so we have more standing or more understanding that they indeed have this right?
Absolutely.
No, I think the question is what rights supersede someone else? If there are other people on there that have those equal rights, who's to say they don't want to put, utilities going a different direction that would interfere with what you guys are proposing and stuff? So I just want to make sure that no one's rights are being trampled on.
And that's, exactly. And that's what we'd look to see. And again, I reference this in my line of work daily in terms of private roads all across Worcester, so the McKenna case is our controlling authority. I've never seen the statute, so I'd certainly want to get my eyes on that as well. And again, it is about everyone has the right, but you can't infringe upon others. So, not taking a position on this matter. I'm sorry.
The only thing I would say is, if you think about it, if multiple people have the right to pass and repass, it's not a case of, which horse gets to the brook and gets the biggest drink. So what I mean by that, if somebody has a right to pass and repass with somebody else, number one gets there, but he can't deny number two's right to equally use the road.
Absolutely.
So Okay, that's all I'm trying to focus. But again, I'm more than happy to give a more definitive or, opinion. And I think it's not even an issue until somebody can tell us how we possibly are minimizing their rights.
Agreed. And thank you for that offer. The board would like to see that legal opinion letter.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we formally request that letter.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Can we just take votes in the middle of the presentation?
And I think, through the chair, I think that would be helpful for us. And then whatever you can provide to us, we can provide to town council, because we want to make sure that the town is also protected in the fact that can they take a vote on a project that maybe can't take place? And if it's proven that it can take place, then that's a different animal that they have to deal with. But I think to keep the project moving and keep the dialogue open, which we want to do, I think it's important to continue to, as you have, give us information in response to our questions. We may still have additional questions. I'm not saying that's the end, and there may be additional questions this evening, but we don't want to stop the project because we're waiting for that information. But that information is critical to determining the ability of the board to even take a position on an LIP. And that's where town council is coming from. And maybe there is case law, which is great. Whatever we get from you, we will pass on to town council. So, thank you.
And I further have, we do have two public comments in relation to this project. And then we offered to the residents that they could write their questions and send them in via email ahead of time. All right, so I do have one, I'm sorry? Town council is Bob Hennigan. Bob Hennigan. In this, yeah. And so this is from John Mertens, right, and he's on Colonial Road. John states, I live on Colonial Road and have questions about the wetlands surrounding Kettle Creek. There are maps showing Kettle Creek, however, it meanders in that area and doesn't seem well defined. The area around Kettle Creek floods regularly enough that there is a lot of water that remains in much of that area. It is also home to coyotes and other wildlife, including a bobcat we regularly see at our home. Are there provisions to protect the wetlands in this area near Kettle Creek? Has there been an environmental impact study performed in this area from a business that has done the study on site? And where can we find that? What are their considerations for these wetlands / FEMA-defined floodplain?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the answer to that is that the applicant previously filed a notice of intent for a development on the front of this property and looked at the wetlands both at the front of this property and at I'll say the north end, where Kettle Brook, which is a perennial stream, gets closest to it. And on the concept plan that you have before you, the 100 and 200-foot marks out from the stream are on the plan, and we would propose to stay out of those areas entirely. We would actually not propose to alter any wetlands as part of this, with the only possible exception being if, in working with the town on improvement to Perry Place and the cross-section of the right-of-way, it was decided to have the road at one particular spot result in a very minor filling, because there's points where the wetlands on each side of the road get close, and if the particular location chosen for the cross-section might result in a very small alteration at one of those, but we're not proposing anything at this time. It's simply, I just bring it up as a possibility, and if that happened, we would mitigate that by creating what's termed a wetland replication area, creating new wetlands somewhere else nearby at least the ratio of 2 to 1.
All right. And next we have public comment.
And I would just add that we have an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission confirming those wetland boundaries.
Thank you, sir. All right, we have Kevin German at 12 Pearl Street. Yes, sir. Yes.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. Thanks very much for letting us come over and talk to this very important subject for this critical possible change of our neighborhood. Well, myself, my family, and other people that asked me to say things, I could not be here tonight for various reasons. We strongly oppose the 154-unit construction, development from happening at 16 Perry Place, along with the 267-car parking lot, plus 30 garages on top of that. And there's a lot of reasons for it. It's a really, if you haven't gone down the road, please go down there. It's really narrow. You're talking about this and that, paving it and all that stuff. You're going to have to widen the road, and you're going to have to take people's property. It's just not wide enough. They have to, right now, be very careful about passing each other on that road. It is gravel, a lot of it, yep, and it is really, really narrow. So you have to figure out how you're going to widen the road without taking away people's, land. So it's not a small change. It's a transformation. It's not a transition. It's a transformation. It's a very large project considering the scope and where it's placed in the neighborhood. It's a very private, small, it's a private road. And it's small, and we don't think that the road and surrounding towns can handle the extra traffic. You're going to have hundreds of people and hundreds of cars that live there, not to mention all the people that are going to visit and whatever it is, and the drain on the police, the fire, water. As you said, they're going to have to try and get Worcester's water, and they're also going to have to use solid and water waste. Where's that going to go? If there is that development, people in the neighborhood know that they get water in the basement from a strong flood. And these people are going to, are going to take away some of the wetlands. It's really impossible to not do that. I have a bunch of stuff, but the neighborhood has families with children that walk the dogs, parents pushing kids on strollers, and we already have enough cut over traffic from Rockland Road. These people just, they don't pay attention to the stop signs. They're going down 50 miles an hour. I know, I live on the street. I watch it all the time. They're not paying attention. Kids are in the road. People are walking, the children and stuff like that. It's dangerous the way it is, not to add hundreds more to this issue. And the bylaws are actually here for us citizens to protect us from overcrowding, drainage, you know it all. Conservation, natural resources, stop the blight and pollution, and regulate the land uses that are going to impact the town's natural, fiscal, and physical obligations to the people. And there's also wildlife. There's a lot of different kind of wildlife. I can't believe I find deer in my yard and all other, close to the city. What are they doing in my yard? I love it, but that's the kind of neighborhood it is. And it's like putting a Walmart at the end of the street. It's a huge, huge deal. It's going to take the town away from Auburn and turn it into a city, and we don't really want to have that turn into a city. We want to keep the town of Auburn the way it is. We work, we pay taxes all our lives so we can live in a community like this that is away from the big city. And now they're bringing the city into our neighborhoods. I know you got to help people, but there's other places you can do it that aren't nearly as complex as what this appears to be. And we don't want our tax dollars subsidizing a developer who's going to get tax breaks for 40B, and I don't know if that was the original intent. It's just something that can get over the bylaws, which is a tool to be used by certain people to get their way. And we're the ones stuck with it. We live there. The developers aren't going to be there. We're going to have to live there. All of us and more people are going to be there longer than they're going to be there, developing it, come in, make their millions, leave, and we're there to pick up the pieces. The damage to the neighborhood is going to be totally different. Anybody agree? So, seem to have some like minds here, and I would really like to ask you to strongly consider not changing this part of Auburn. Please go down there and see it if you haven't yet. It's really a small dead-end road. Like he said, water on both sides of the road, water at the end. It's not going to be an easy thing, and people got to, developer comes in and then they leave, and all the things that you guess would be okay may not necessarily turn out that way. Isn't that correct? Well, thanks everybody.
you know, the other room is also full of residents.
Okay.
That could not fit into this room. Okay? Thank you.
We do need to recognize, though, that the developer does have rights as well here. We're trying to balance these between the residents here and the developer, and with a full understanding of what 40B is and what rights that takes away from the town to have any input. Okay. Next, we have, is it Dean Harris or Dean Haziz?
Dean Hazes.
Dean Haziz.
Good evening, board,
Good evening.
residents. How you doing? My neighbor
My
said...
just one second, my apologies. That is 11 Pearl Street.
So, yeah, this is Amy Miller, and we bought a house on 11 Pearl Street. We're right on the corner of Perry Place and Pearl. So, obviously, my question, and a lot of questions were answered by the last person who made the speech, my neighbor. But my number one concern is the roadway. It's not wide. And I don't understand where all these cars are gonna go in and out in that one spot. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know how they're gonna do it. You're talking about 600 cars, okay, a day, times 7 trips. Was that the estimate, or 7.6? Because, you know, people say 150 cars or 160 spots and 30 garages, but
Just one speaker at a time, please,
I
guys.
live in a house, I've got 3 kids, we all have cars, that's 5 cars in one house. So, yeah, you're gonna have apartments with 2 bedrooms or whatever, they're gonna have people that live there, it's not gonna be just 1.6 persons per unit. So my concern is traffic. My other thing is this traffic study that hasn't been done. It's a little disingenuous. I mean, they were told a month ago, but I've been hearing about this development for a year, or maybe longer. So I just want that to, you know, marinate in your brain a little bit. So it's a trust issue for me right away that I sit here and I hear and I don't hear. It just sounds like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, but political banter. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, my main concern is, again, the traffic.
Ma'am, if you could give your name.
Oh, my name's Amy Miller. I live at 11 Pearl also.
Thank you.
We've lived there for about 5 years, and the neighborhood is fantastic. It's quiet, it's peaceful. Adding 200-plus people is going to, I mean, well over that, is going to drastically change it. Again, going down that street, when you go down, like, Perry Street, you gotta be careful. You know, there's cars, there's kids. We all know each other's cars and kids. We know which houses have the kids, and, well, we gotta be really careful here, and, you know, we look out for that. When you got 600 more cars going up and down that street, that's not gonna be the issue. You know, I grew up in a town. I want my kids to grow up in a town. And like my neighbor said, this is going to feel more like a city with this many people added. I don't want to live in a city. And I just bought this house, so I sure don't want to move. But it's the traffic, it's the safety, and it's just too small of a street. And I'm not willing to give up any of my property that I just paid very good money for. Thank you.
Go down there and look at it, it is a dead end. Why are they doing this down there? There's nothing there, there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to grow, it makes no sense. So please,
Drive
please,
down.
if you have any say in this, say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note, because it's been, I think, slightly misrepresented a couple times, Perry Place is a 40-foot wide right-of-way. Right now, it has a drivable surface. Our right-of-way is the legal limits. As I was saying, it has a drivable surface that varies in width between 18 and 22 feet. We'd be making it 24 feet as our first proposal for what would be the improvement to the road.
And that's the required length in Auburn under its bylaws, correctly, correct?
Correct.
And through the chair, it is a 40-foot easement as confirmed by DPW.
Okay, and that is a 40-foot easement as confirmed
I mean, a 40-foot right-of-way.
right away, yep. Okay. All right, so Guys, I hope you found those, the public comments constructive for you guys, so you know what the concerns are. So I think at this point, we're looking for a legal opinion letter, certainly the traffic study, which you guys have known full well about, and I believe the fire department's concerns as well, in terms of that turning radius. Is there any other?
Through the chair, we did receive a copy of the municipal impact analysis, so first of all, I wanted to thank you for updating that for us. We may have some additional questions on that. I need to circulate that to the department head. For instance, just looking quickly at it, I know it just came in the day before, but just looking quickly at it, just some of the data as far as how you develop the impact on the police and fire. We may want to just talk offline about how you arrived at that. Generally, we look at call volume, and I didn't see anything in there on call volume, but this analysis could be based on a different methodology, which would be acceptable as well. So we'll just keep that line of communication open. We'll run the questions through the town planner as we go through this. If we have questions, if we can reach out to you. I know the fire chief needs to take a look at this, police chief. Again, for us, the comments that we've had internally, we've shared with you, concerned about the width of the road, concerned about take away the legal, the civil matters, that's separate. But just looking at the width of the road, what improvements would be made, what's the impact to the neighborhood, and how, if the board entered into an LIP with the developer, how would you help us mitigate those impacts on the neighborhood? And maybe we can work something out, and I don't know if considering less units is something that you look at, but I think those are all dialogue that we need to continue to have, because this is a major, major project, as you know, and we recognize that you have rights under Chapter 40B. We're not trying to remove those rights. We're just trying to make sure we do the due diligence here to understand before the board makes a decision on an LIP, because we know you can go forward with or without the board. So we're trying to do the best we can for the town and for the residents. So we would appreciate if you continue to just work with us, get the information to us as we request it. I'll circulate that in the morning to all the department heads to take another look at it, and you'll probably hear from us again.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Ms. Largess, we're going to hold comments till next time. You're certainly free to email them over, but again, we're gathering information right now, so I just don't see any point to...
I just had a couple of questions to you.
Well, you can certainly reach out to me at the office, you can email me, and we can, I can have them ready for next meeting. And if I do see them urgent, I could have, through the town manager, I'll relay them over to the developer.
Through the chair, I think what would be helpful, I know the board sent out a letter to the neighbors asking to submit any questions if possible in writing. If you can't do them in writing, please feel free to call our office and we'll take them down. We need to have that. We only received one, believe it or not, which was there. But having them in writing helps us define, because then there's no concern over what was the question. We need to be able to look at the question and share that with the developer. So we're getting the questions answered that you're asking us. So that would be helpful. I don't know how.
Yes, and we do want to get as much information for everybody out there as possible, so that you can have more focused, more poignant questions of the developer when the time is right. But we're really in that fact-finding. That's why I've made the decision not to necessarily open these hearings to full-on public comment, because we frankly don't have enough information at this point in time. Furthermore, folks, you don't need the hand-raising. Public comment time was, you had the opportunity and the chance to email.
About the address, because we weren't aware,
Oh, absolutely.
several of us weren't aware that you were requesting emails, or we would have written them.
Absolutely.
We didn't even get letters. We didn't get letters.
Through the chair, I can, first of all, there's no requirement for the town to have a public hearing on this, just so we're clear. That requirement comes when it goes to the ZBA. That's a requirement for public hearing. We felt, as a courtesy to the residents in the area, that we would follow the public hearing legal requirements, which is a 300-foot notice to abutters within 300 feet of the project. So if abutters were not notified, that's where, if it was a legal requirement, we notified the legal requirement. But there is no legal requirement to do it. So we followed the 300-foot buffer. So some of you may not have received the letter, but we went by what the ZBA and/or planning board would use, which is a 300-foot buffer from the center of the project.
Can we find that online at All in Government? The addresses are right?
Oh, yes, I guess, everything, yep, you can send it to our office at, 102 Central Street. You can, attention to the board, attention to me. Yes, again, it's important for us to have that in writing, because we need to track what the questions are that we're getting, so we can get them all together and get them to the developer to get the answers for you. Sometimes people will just stop us on the way, or, make a quick phone call to a board member and say, oh, what about this? We want to make sure we're not dropping anything. There's a lot of people We understand. There's a lot of questions. We don't want to miss someone's important question. So while you may not be able to put it in writing, we understand not everyone has access to computers. That's fine. Call our office. We'll read it back to you so we know we got it right, and we're going to compile all the questions. We just want to make sure your voices are heard, and this, as the chair said, this is the best route that the chair decided to make sure that everybody is heard. And then, once we get your questions and we give them to developer, and the developer can respond to it, then at that point, you can probably open to.
At that point, we
further
have
questions.
productive conversation, productive information being shared, no one's being surprised, and we're keeping a lot of the emotion out of it, so these meetings don't devolve. And that's really my central point by doing it, but I am absolutely asking questions and making sure we do this the right way on behalf of you, the residents. So certainly get those emails over to us, and at this point, I think we're looking to probably get some more information from you, gentlemen? Okay.
And if you could get us the questions through the chair within the next, week or so, that would be helpful, because respectfully, we want to make sure that the developer has an opportunity to answer the questions. Some of the questions are very detailed, as what we just received. Some may require a short answer, and some may require a longer answer. And likewise, some of the questions are directed to a town administration, so we want to make sure we get the right information to you as well. We'd rather give you the right information and take a couple days to get it than to just answer it on the fly and give you the wrong information.
Mr. Chambers?
Is there a preferred email that they can email, like, for this, or that we can state now when anyone rewatches it?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at the letter. Just give me a second, because it's a special, it's a directed Board of Selectmen email address. I just wanna make sure I have it. Do you have that ready right now? I'll get it for you in a minute.
Yeah, because this just says the select board. so
Right.
it doesn't give us
And
the
if you
action.
could, in the subject line, because we get a lot of emails to this address, if you could just put in the subject line, Perry Place, so we can get to it right away. We do. So when you do send an email, we'll get you the address in a minute. Please put in the subject line Perry Place, so we can get to it right away. And believe it or not, we probably get to that email account, or at least to my email account, we get probably 15,000 a year. So we don't want it to get lost. So if you put it in the subject line, we'll get it. So I think one of them is, and certainly you can send it to this one as well while we're waiting. Oh, you got it?
Auburn BOS at
Okay. All right, so it's Auburn, B-O-S, so all one word, Auburn, B-O-S, at town.auburn.ma.us. So Auburn, B-O-S, at town.auburn.ma.us. It's also on the website. So if for any reason you can't find it, go back and check the town's website, look under Board of Selectmen, there's a link right there. You can actually just click on that link, and you don't even have to type the address in, you can get right to it. Go on Town Manager's site, you can just click on it, and it goes right to it, which is, I think it's Town MGR, with the same address. So we'll get it if you send it to us, and we appreciate, if you could get it to us sooner than later, that helps us continue this due diligence process. So, and we do want to thank you for being responsive and getting back to us, and I'll share the questions as I receive them. Is that okay? Oh, do you want to set a next meeting date?
Yes. Is next meeting enough time? I believe it's the 26th?
It's 26th, yeah, it's 26th.
Okay. Does that time frame work for you, gentlemen? Yeah. All right. All right, so before I'll entertain a motion to continue this matter. I would ask for any folks that aren't wishing to stay for the remainder of the meeting, when you do vacate the room, if you could just keep comments down and keep conversation down until you get outside the building, or at least downstairs. There's no wall right here, so it gets really loud when people just step right outside and start speaking. So,
And through the chair, if I may, we won't send another notice, because
Yes.
we've done two. This is just a continuation of this public meeting, so you all hear that date. So it's September 26th, rather than notifying the abutters again. And again, we understand it goes beyond the 300 feet, but hopefully you're sharing with your neighbors that go beyond that.
September 26th, what time?
6:30.
Yeah, and again, sometimes I would have to double check. There may be a public hearing, as we had tonight. We have to schedule public hearings 14 days prior to, sometimes even more. So sometimes there's a public hearing that's already scheduled for 6:30, which is maybe why it starts at 6:45. But the meeting itself starts at 6:30, and it will be one of the first items on the agenda.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to continue.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Do you want to take a quick recess?
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We're going to go back in session. And we have newly Dr. Adam Menard here this evening. We have a motion to move up Agenda 5A.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. It is a vote. Sir. Excellent. And do we have any questions from the board members?
I assume that map has been shown at the planning board meeting?
Sorry?
Is there a map that shows the areas that are being changed, and has that been presented at the planning board meeting?
This is scheduled for a public hearing, so my this is transferred tonight in 2 weeks. This whole map changes just to the changes to the table.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Okay. And do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we transmit it for the required public hearing.
A second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is a vote. Thank you, Adam. Okay. We're going to go back to the agenda item number 3F. That would be the town human resource study.
Through the chair, thank you very much. Tonight we have with us, well, first of all, I want to acknowledge the school superintendent, Dr. Beth Chamberlain, who's here, and I have to say, just by way of history on this, we received a grant from the state through the Community Compact Program, and we received a grant to enable us to enter into a contract with the Collins Center to study the possibility of a joint town/school human resource function or department. And the previous school superintendent was very supportive of this, and when Beth Chamberlain was appointed in January, we reached out to her and said, we've got this study ongoing, and she was well aware of it anyway, because she had been the assistant superintendent, and she continued to be supportive. So I just want to thank her, because this involved a lot of interviewing and time of both school department personnel as well as town personnel. So it's been a really good partnership to get us to this point. So given that, I want to introduce Mary A. Carty, who's been the lead on this, and Lindsay Katz is working with Mary from the Collins Center, and she is on remotely this evening. So Mary, welcome, and I also want to thank you for all the work that you've done with Lindsay. This has been going on for maybe 9 months now, 9 months.
Yes,
It's a
yeah.
lot of work. This has never been done. In the town here, we've never had a combined human resource function, and we just really felt it was critical to look at this and see how we can make some efficiencies, how we can do this better. And Mary's going to go over the results of the study. And I want to thank Ed, too, and his staff, because they did a lot of work on this as well.
They sure did. So good evening. Thank you so much. I brought a sweater in case I got cold in here. And now I'm going to my sauna, so it's been fun so far. We're so happy to be here. And this is, have to say, I've been with the Collins Center almost 13 years. And this is one of the best collaborative groups that I have worked with. To start out with, the general government and the school department jointly want a project is really unheard of. And I think it was time and space and leadership and circumstances of, what the town is facing in its next chapter and really being preemptive. So what I'm going to do tonight is just briefly go through some slides which summarizes the points you're going to have time to digest when you read the report. I'm not going to read the report to you. If you want to fall asleep later, don't read it because it's riveting and it's going to keep you up. So tomorrow, when you want to wake up, you want to read that. So if you're not familiar with the Collins Center, we're a center within the McCormick School of Government at UMass Boston. We were created in 2008 with the sole purpose and missions to help governments work better. I've been blessed to be able to be with the center for 13 years. My background is municipal HR and labor relations. I quit my job 18 years ago. I know that because my son just turned 18 and he's my last one going through public school. He's a senior in Shrewsbury High. And I was the HR director for the town of Watertown for many years, and Barnstable before that, the state DPW before that, doing labor relations. So it's a joy to work with municipalities who are so dedicated, and we just love the people we work with. So my colleague, Lindsay Katz, who really did much of the interviewing and reading through everything, is on the Zoom call. So I want to just call her out and thank her for all of her legwork back and forth with Ed and with Deb and with the school department. Everybody was gracious with their time, and us really being annoying, going after them for a little bit more detail or a little bit more explanation. you do this work and you get an overview, and then you have to dig in to really see how things go. So we are really grateful for that. So as the town manager mentioned, you were smart to get a community compact grant. It's a great opportunity to look at a project that you wouldn't otherwise do. You know, I don't know if you're eligible again this year, but go for it. There's IT grants, there's regionalization grants, efficiency grants, so it's been a great partnership and a great program. And really what we started out with was using words like shared HR, and what the project ended up with was a slight difference on that to be centralized. And it's not much of a difference, but we really feel that for this municipality, others have different ones, where you have a joint employee with two bosses, and it can get a little tricky. So we're really glad that there's flexibility in these grants to come up with the analysis, and then really maybe go in a little bit different direction, all with the same purpose in mind. And as the town manager said, tremendous support. Nobody was defensive. Everybody was on board, and that is just so unheard of. So we appreciate that. So human resources today, and I think this is probably one of the impetuses of why the town wanted to look at this. You know, we need to see is HR, and I'm going to shorten it to HR so I don't fumble over human resources every single time. Is it transactional or strategic? You know, when you think about personnel, it's the job descriptions, it's the filing, but really, what is the biggest expense of your budget? Your people, or things related to your people, right? It's about the resources that you dedicate to the humans who work for you. And you have to be strategic about that. So that's where organizations in all lines of work are moving. Municipalities have come a little bit slower to it, but having the foresight to look at this and how are we functioning as a general government and a school department, it was wise, and I think the timing is just right. We have so many challenges out there. Everybody's talking about the great exodus, people quitting, people retiring, being thoughtful about succession planning. Obviously, this town is doing that well, and I'll get to that when we get through the report. The increased pressure on HR, legally, liability, laws, mandates, policies, you know, in my 25 years, it has been night and day, the increases. And I think that's true in most of our municipal work, whether it's EPA, there's all these mandates, and we have to be a little bit more thoughtful. How are we handling it? And how are we using our resources, not just human, our financial resources efficiently and effectively? Is there redundancy? So a lot of the work we do is looking at those things. And I did mention the mandates, and sadly, with humans and workplaces, there's liabilities, whether it's injury, whether it's lawsuits, whether it's policies. And by having dedicated HR focused on that, people do a lot with a little people. You know, you have staff, you need somebody dedicated paying attention to these things. And you have really strong department heads. Their job is not solely the human side of things. So dedicating some resources to the human side of things is where I know you will go. All right, our methodology was, I'm going to go quickly. We interviewed extensively the town manager's office, the superintendent's office, all of the finance people, the school business finance office, and not only the managers, but the staff doing the work on a day-to-day basis. We need to hear from them on how it works. We can have managers know the goal and the end results, but the nuts and bolts, we talk to the staff doing the work. Human resource functions we looked at, just to name a few. They're all in details. We've got tables within the charts and tables within the report. We're going to let you at your leisure go through those. But these are the things that we look at that are human resources when you think about it. Classification, recruitment, policy development, training development, employee relations, benefit administration, post-employment issues of of COBRA, unemployment, retirement, all those things. We looked at all of these and more. Our key recommendations, which is why we put it on the first page too, because you don't have to flip to the end, we really do recommend strongly that you have a centralized HR function. The wording within your chart of accounts and your budgets might still be under town manager, so we're calling it the HR function and/or department. I think when you set it up, whether it's financial or, having it be a function within the town manager's office or a separate department, that's totally up to the town and how you want to operate that. We do recommend that you centralize all HR. We recommend that you use your succession planning model that you've got going on here, and we commend you. I do an awful lot of executive recruitments for town administrators, town managers. You are so smart, and to grab the talent you have and run with it. So I want to commend you on that. And I see there's a typo in manager on my report, on my slide, I'm sorry. And we do think that you should combine the role of an HR director with the assistant town manager. That's a model that we see in this area, because you're not a large enough town to have or need a full-time HR director and you would need to pay a high salary for that, and an assistant, and an HR coordinator. So it really is the model. Grafton has the model, Northborough has the model, Shrewsbury has that model, and more are moving to it, not only because it makes good sense, but it also is broadening the field for succession planning across professionalizing municipalities. So I'm kind of a geek about that. But when we looked at the work that was being done here and needed to be done here, this made the most sense for Auburn. It's not a recommendation we give all the time. Oftentimes we say, yes, you're a big municipality, you're a city, you need an HR department, you need this. So we do not enter it into it lightly, but we think based on the data we were able to collect and coalesce, that is the best recommendation. And I already buried the lead, create a centralized HR function within the town manager's department, and create the one position we're suggesting to add as a standalone position is an HR generalist position. What this would do is provide broader HR support. You have a fabulous HR benefits coordinator who does some other things other than benefits. What has also happened is there's been some transition in duties in the school department. There was a very long-serving employee who retired, and we are kind of capturing some of those duties to be part of this HR generalist position. This HR generalist would be a professional, not really an assistant department head. It's the same level as the HR benefits person, and it would be that who's managing leave, who's helping with policy, training, development. It's really that position's that's gonna help you focus on the day-to-day things you're not getting to with your current structure. What you're doing in this town is being done well. It's what you're not getting to, that strategic thing, the planning for succession, the planning for training and development, those kinds of things. Those are the things that are not able to be gotten to in a comprehensive way. So the creation of an HR generalist position will help. It will also help in cross-training with some of the other positions that touch HR. And because right now, if you have a vacancy in one of your key positions, you're in a lot of trouble. Who do you get to do that? I believe Ed can manage payroll and benefits, but, he's doing a few other things too. So we do recommend the creation of a generalist position. And then on the smaller items, you'll see that we call it adopt specific recommendations for improvement on key HR functions. We have some slight process improvement recommendations on how you do payroll, how do you do some of your transactions. So you'll see that section at the end of the report. That is a very brief overview. I want to say thank you for allowing us to be here, and I'm going to restate how impressed we are with the staff that you have. I know you have good staff, and so committed, so dedicated. Not one person rolled their eyes at us, and that's a true compliment. And there's 351 municipalities. I've worked in about 175 of them over my 13 years with the Collins Center, and this has just been a really great project with everybody rowing in the same direction with their eyes on the prize. So I want to thank you. And then happy to answer any questions. I know you've got a long evening. I can answer questions now. I can answer questions via email or come back another time after you've had some time to digest.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Do we have any questions from the board members?
Was there an analysis of how many hours would be saved by hiring the generalists so they could get to the other work? Those key department heads that are currently doing the multiple functions?
We did do some analysis on what the department heads were doing. There's positions in the town manager's office. We did not do, it's really hard to encapsulate the percentage of time. When there's a vacancy in a department, it can be a huge amount of time. So it really is, there's going to be a significant shift from some of the functions in the school department, whereas it used to be that the onboarding was kind of coordinated. We were really recommending that things are centralized. So what will happen is there may be more work on the benefits position, but some of that work will be freed up to the generalist. So I think that it's a bigger shift there than from the individual departments. We have, and I know that the Assistant Town Manager, Finance Director has worked recently on payroll processing. So we've already seen some, you all are already making strides in some of those things. I really think it's more a matter of the work division. There's a part-time clerical position that does workers' comp and injured on duty. There's a capacity there over the short and long term to refine some of those things, but that function is working really well now. It might be shifted, and you don't know what's coming next. I think you're going to find that it's a best practice. It's going to be more efficient, but it's not cutting anything. It's growing, and it's doing things you haven't, quite frankly, done that you should be doing. So yes, it will make it more efficient. It will be much better for employees coming on, one-stop shopping when you get hired. You're not going to guess, well, particularly for the school employees, they kind of get sent to town hall, and they're, well, who do I see about this? So I think really the efficiency and the consolidation, and there's partnerships with the mass teachers and the retirement system for the general government and for those non-teachers at the school department. So it's those kinds of efficiencies, and I'm not sure that there's a direct analysis of time, but process improvement.
Through the chair, if I may add to that, thank you, Mary. We, part of the exercise that we started at one point was to see, there's a list in your report of how many people work on HR, and we each tried to submit the amount of hours, and literally it changed on a daily basis. Because I filled it out on a Thursday, and the following Monday I went from a 25% of my week to a 90% of my week, because an incident happens. So for me, trying to figure out how many hours I spend, I can generally tell you probably 40% of a normal work week, and of course none of us have a normal work week, so it all depends on how many hours you put in. So the percentage wasn't working. If we put in an 80-hour week, was I spending 20? Yes. If I only put a 40-hour week in, I was spending 20. There were weeks that I only spent 10, and there were weeks that maybe I ended up spending 60, because we had to update some things, we were doing some contract work, and in speaking with Dr. Chamberlain, she's in the same situation. Certain things happen that you don't see coming, that takes your time. But I would say I've been doing this for 12 years, And when we first did the charter change back in 2011, we had said that I would be the HR director, as the town manager. But recognizing that over the years, we're going to get everything else done that was a priority, and when we get to it, we're going to get to the HR. And unfortunately, we just didn't get to it. And I knew it was important to have it done. It was just one of those things where I thought, okay, somebody else needs the resources, some other department needs something, I'm just going to put off. But it's getting to the point where there are days I can't do the regular operations because of all the HR, and I know I can speak, Ed has the same issue, and I think Dr. Chamberlain has said the same thing. There are days you just have no idea what the HR is. And I would say it was particularly complicated by COVID, which made it even more hard to put an hour time frame on it, because with COVID, whatever we had tripled. Because on a daily basis, there were new laws, there were new regulations, there were new requirements. It kept coming from the state, from the federal government, from the CDC. There wasn't a day that we weren't saying, something else we need to do with all the employees. So that became kind of, at those points, maybe 75% of a normal work week would have been dedicated to HR issues because of COVID. So it was an interesting exercise, so we thank you, but we scrapped it because there was just no way to do that.
Another question. So one of the recommendations is to centralize it under the town manager department, but the assistant town manager would serve as the HR director. Are we looking to add requirements as we look to fill that role, or are there certifications that would be required of a new?
Through the chair, there are, and I'll turn to Ed to answer that, but I can tell you there are certifications that didn't even exist probably, 12 years ago. They exist now. I think when you start putting your recommendations together and your job description together, Ed's probably going to be looking for somebody who has real specific either qualifications, experience, and/or certifications. But
Yeah, and if I may, I think the situation as it exists today offers a unique opportunity to put a focus on that. Certainly as a result of the appointment that the board has made for me, and I'm very appreciative of that, we can now kind of morph this position that I'm currently serving in. I have the financial expertise in the background. I don't need an assistant with also a financial background. I need an assistant more to deal with the day-to-day administrative aspects of the town manager's position when required. But also it offers an opportunity to focus on HR and some of the deficiencies that we've recognized as a result of Mary doing the study. I can tell you both school department and general government went through a difficult time over the past year. I lost a 35-year payroll individual. School department lost the same thing. We had no backup. And it forced people on the management level to jump in and put out the fires and do the payroll. We're trying to address that now through HR, where we have layers on the onion that will allow us to have some continuity in the way we address our HR and personnel functions that was really bifurcated, because the school department was doing what they thought was right, we were doing what we thought was right, and in some cases they were in conflict with one another. And that's when you expose yourself to potential liability, when you're not consistently treating employees the same way. So I want to thank Mary and Lizzie. They did a fantastic job, and we had some in-depth discussions over the last 9 months that really resulted in what Mary came up with in terms of recommendations. We're on board with that. I've had conversations with Dr. Chamberlain. We're both on board with these recommendations. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And it's also really allowed us to now shift gears a little bit and consider decentralizing our payroll, put it at the department level when it was all being done in the accountant's office. So we want to kind of phase that in and train our employees. And once again, it creates some redundancy and some layering, not only at the higher level, but at the departmental level too. So, and we've always put a focus on cross-training that allow us to mobilize people where they're needed at times of distress, or at times when people may be out for a long period of time. And then we're going to continue to focus on that. But I think that captures the essence of what the recommendations I made before you tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just have, not really on the report itself, but just a general ask. Has the school committee, has this been presented to them yet?
I'm going to turn to the, Dr. Chamberlain to respond to that, thanks.
Yes, this has been presented to school committee, and we're in full support. Much of what has been described here. This is becoming, I didn't go to school for HR, right? That wasn't my area of focus, and it's become increasingly complex. Certainly COVID layered something on there, but there's more to it with the requirements that go along with really onboarding people in a professional and appropriate way, making sure it's consistently done and carried forward. And then it does limit liability and mistakes that can happen down the way. So we're all in favor for this, and I think there was a lot of duplication of effort, which we see as, we can use that time for better purposes.
Thank you. I was just concerned that they might be watching and seeing this for the first time, so
No.
I would not want that to happen.
Through the chair, they were aware when we applied for the grant. We made sure at the time, Superintendent Hanfield and I had spoken, and I had come to this board to let you know we were applying, and he had gone to the school committee. So this has been on their radar screen since the day we applied.
I don't want you at the meeting, so.
Most everything. Okay. I think that's.
So, yeah, if that's, so
All
Mary,
right,
we
that's
wanna
great.
thank
No,
you.
I think that it's a smart move to combine. You will get that strategic partner in HR at the executive level, and that will filter across all departments. So we wish you all the best. Please reach out. We have any questions. As I said, I live in nearby Shrewsbury. Happy to pop over. Not after your next public hearing, however.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so
Leslie.
much.
And through the chair, I just want to also thank Deb DuBois for all the work she put into this. She is our HR benefits coordinator, and she's got a full plate, as do all of us. We all have a piece of this, but we are working toward implementation of this, just so you know. Again, we don't have plans like this that we sit on a shelf. We have too many other things to do than to make a plan that we're not going to follow. So we are following the plan. We're starting to implement it. We're working with the school department and Beth to determine how we can go forward and get this position funded for the generalists, and then down the road, as we start having turnover and retirements, we are already looking ahead to how do we kind of redirect some of those positions as well.
Okay.
Which will be Ed and Dr. Chamberlain doing.
Excellent. All right, we have no gift acceptances to be done this evening. So moving on to 5C, under proclamations and recognitions, we have a request for proclamation to recognize September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. All members had the materials in their packets. Do you have anything to add on that matter? All set. Okay. Do we have any questions of the board members? No? I think we are able to take a vote on this matter if you've had enough time to review it.
We do things different. We did different things, so I'm not going to say anything because they're senior members. So your voices should be heard on this. It's, what we want to do. In the past, we haven't done for these type of things. Does that mean that we can't? At one time, the board used to give a proclamation every year for UN Day. They haven't done that for 15 years. So it's a new board. I would like the board to make a decision as to what you guys want to do going forward rather than recite the history.
Okay. I appreciate that. And do we have a motion?
I would make a motion for a proclamation to recognize September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month.
In a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, it is a vote.
Through the chair, may I ask consideration for moving up item 6D? I see our DPW Director, Joanna Paquin, is still on the call.
Yes.
So we have, if you would. I'll wait till you
Absolutely.
make it.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote.
Thank you. Joanna Paquin, our DPW Director, is on the call, and we just have a standard vote to declare equipment as surplus. For those of you who may be new, we do this anytime it's surplus equipment. Joanna, do you want to speak to this?
Good evening.
There's 5 pieces of equipment that are basically at their end of use life. 2 dump trucks and 3 sanders. We're looking to put the dump trucks for auction, and I'm not really sure if we can do much with the sanders, but we would be disposing of those as well.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions of the board members? Yes.
I see different year models and stuff. I didn't know what end of useful life was and if there's a schedule, and the 2007 model was just held on longer than it should have been? Or like, what is the overall process for disposal?
Sure. So we try to keep these dump trucks in use for about years. So they did hang on longer than we were hoping. So we got more life out of them than we expected. But at this point, it's going to cost more. It's not worth trying to fix them. So we're looking to get rid of them.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? And do we have a motion?
Motion to declare the items surplus as outlined in the DPW Director's memo to the board.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is a vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna.
Right. Going back to order, I show that we would be to, gets confusing when we jump around.
Yeah, sorry.
I believe we're on to item 6B.
Correct.
Update on the reserve at Ashworth Hill and donation recommendations, and with that, I'll turn it over to Julie Jacobson.
Great, thank you. In your packet, you'll find a memo that I prepared that shows the update on the Eastland Partners project on Blaker Street, which is known as the reserves at Ashworth Hill.
I don't have it.
I will pass this along.
I can get it later.
My apologies. So the memo was in there, and I was remiss, I did not actually put the construction schedule in that I had Sharon send today. So that's in your packet now, and it was not in the packet on Friday. So this project was approved back for an LIP, which is interesting because we just had this discussion tonight about an LIP. This was approved by the board on October 28th, 2019. Now, at the time, it was obviously about 6 months before COVID, and the developer had a schedule, and he's off of that schedule, much of which due to COVID and related supply chain issues, labor issues, things like that. Things just got slower. So we asked him for an updated schedule, and along with that, we wanted to know what the donation schedule would be based on that. So in your packet, there's a description of it's 324 units. I put some information in here that I thought the board might be interested in hearing, especially with the other project proposed right now. So right now, our SHI, which is Subsidized Housing Inventory, if you look on the state's website, it's still only showing about 3.8%. That's outdated. It has been updated, they just haven't updated their website, but it is updated in the actual inventory. Our affordable housing inventory right now is 5.8, and the reason it jumped recently was because Julia Bancroft is almost completed. So when a project pulls building permits, generally that's the start of when they can start counting it, but if a project takes a longer time, sometimes they wait until you get the occupancy permit. So in general, you're not gonna get the units counted until they have occupancy permits. So a number of people have said, well, you know, with the Blaker Street project going on, how come we don't get safe harbor and we can reject the project on Perry Place? It's because we're only at 5.8%, and it goes by the date of the application of the developer. So even if this process takes 6 months and we hit it in 6 months, you go back to the date the developer applied for this. So we're at 5.8%, and we did some analysis, and if the 324 units on Blaker Street come to be, when they come to be, that would put our rate at 10.16 if you use the 2010 data from the census. The state is not using the 2010 data. They're in the process of updating it. They think it will be updated over the winter to use the 2020 census. If that happens, we believe that obviously our population grew, which means our affordable housing level has to grow. So we're kind of chasing the rabbit there, but if that happens, I believe if we use the 2020 data, then we couldn't come up with the exact rate, but I would tell you it will be under the 10%, because we have more population. But we'd be close. So that data is in the report. And then just briefly, again, as a reminder, this is 324 units. There are 122 one-bedroom, 170 two-bedroom, and 32 three-bedroom. Under 40B projects, it's required to have 10% of your units be three-bedroom. So you're going to see that with any project that comes in. You saw it tonight, you saw it with this one. So there is a schedule that, again, I apologize, I thought I had attached it. The schedule, right now, the Eastland is looking to pull their first permit in February of 2023, so in a few months. And then they would continue to pull permits every month between February 2023 up until January of 2024, so about a year, when they would pull their last permit. It's a three-phase project, always has been. They pull permits for each building as they progress. So between February of next year and January of the following year, which is 11 months, they anticipate to pull all of the permits with full occupancy of all three phases in August of 2024. Now, the donation schedule, so again, they were not required to do this, but they built it right into the LIP application to the state. They are going to give us $50,000 each month that they pull a permit. So assuming that the schedule holds, they'll pull their first permit in February, we get $50,000. Every month from February to November brings us 10 months at $50,000. That brings us to our $500,000 total donation from them. So if this project can proceed on the schedule that they've given us a couple of weeks ago, then we would start getting the money in February, and by November, you would have all $500,000. So what I attached herein is a revised, we call it a wish list for lack of a better word. It's a donation list, and Mr. Carpenter will remember this because he's the only member of the board now that was here back in 2019 when we had this conversation. But we had identified some areas that we thought would be appropriate for the use of the donation that would benefit both the residents of the new development and residents in general in town. And the board didn't take any final action for this reason that we felt, let's wait and see when the project starts, because our needs may change. And sure enough, here we are 3 years later, and some of the needs we identified in 19 are no longer needs. Either we found another way to do it, or that's mostly it. Most of them, we found another way to do it. So we did have an internal meeting. We met with the school superintendent, we met with our department heads, and we took another look at what we're going to recommend to the board. But I would preface it with this. I would suggest the board not vote immediately. I think you might want to wait and see if this project does actually start in February. Because if it's delayed another 6 months or another year for any reason, then your needs may change once again.
Priorities may change, yeah.
So right now, our feeling is, as it was when we came in 2019, the number one priority that we believe for that area would be roadway. You heard it tonight on the project that's proposed on Perry Ave. The roadway reclamation or paving or things that may be needed, impacts that those roads may take from the construction vehicles alone. You know, the road may need to be resurfaced, it may need some work. So we really feel that that should be a priority. It's for the residents of that area, it's for the residents of the new development. That figure in 19 was $150,000. And right now, when we're saying it's $300,000, if that work started next year, that figure could be $400,000. Road construction has more than doubled in 1 year, never mind in 3 years. We don't know what the engineering costs are, we don't know what the supplies are, we don't know what the labor costs are. It's work that has to be contracted out. So our recommendation is let's maybe use a figure of $300,000 to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, but that could be more. Now, if there's additional funding, this had been discussed previously, it's been discussed with the developer, they also were supportive of it. You might want to look at Goddard Park improvements. You know, we keep having to get additional funds like every other project because the costs keep going up. I think that's a project that benefits the entire community, whether you're a new resident to Blaker Street or you're a resident in the town who's been here for years. Goddard Park is everybody's park. It's everyone's downtown. You may want to consider that in addition to possibly putting money toward the summer concert series, which again is a great asset for residents who move here, for their families. The Independence Day event, Memorial Day events, those are all things that benefit the entire community. So if there's money left over from roadway, it might be a consideration. I do want to point out one thing, two things that are not on here. Number one, the communications tower that was on here, that was our number one priority. At this point, it's still our number one priority, but we don't think we should wait until November. So even if this project goes and that communications tower is needed, you wouldn't be able to start that until, go out to bid at least until November. So at this point, I believe we're probably going to be coming back into you for a request from ARPA, because we're in the process of getting some final quotes on that. That system also went from about 250,000. My understanding could be 500,000 right now. Again, because of the costs over the 3-year period. So rather than use the entire donation for the communications system, we're going to come back to you for a request for ARPA. So for those who may not be aware of it, the communications system out in the west part of town is not good for police and fire. We need an additional communications tower, we need some additional receivers, we need a whole system, because there's spotty communication. Now, if you're adding 320 units, you're adding more residents here, we need to service the residents that are already there in addition to the new residents. So we felt that was a priority. Police and fire are getting very concerned about it and feel it's a priority. So we're working on potentially another source rather than waiting another whole year or longer and coming back and saying, we still need this. It's been 3 years and we need it. The other thing is not on here are the day-to-day costs, because everyone says, well, this project, any of these projects, it's going to cost us because we're going to have more pupils, we're going to need more teachers, we're going to need more equipment, we need more staff, we may need another school. We may need another building inspector, maybe temporarily if it's a 3-year project, 2-year project. Maybe we won't need one, it depends on how smoothly the permit process goes. We may need a clerk of the works, we may need fire safety. All of that would come out of additional revenues that come from taxation. So we didn't put it on as a donation wish list because that's inherent to the project itself. You're doing a project, you're getting revenues from that project, those revenues should support the operational needs of the town, which would be police, fire, DPW. But, so it's not that we haven't thought about it, but we weren't putting that as something under the donation. Under the donation, we were putting more of a one-time need that really could benefit that area and others. So anyway, that's my long update on the project. I know it's, a lot of you probably get asked by residents, what's going on, when is it going to start, how long is it going to take? We asked the same question, so Ed and I had a great meeting with the developer, and this is the report that he gave us. We worked through it, and I think at least gives us an idea of where the town is with regard to the donation, but most importantly, where they are with regard to the units coming online.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board members? No? Okay. And no votes needed there?
No votes needed, just wanted to get it on your radar screen to just start thinking about, because if the donation dollars do start rolling in, you may want to think about it over the course of the next few months, but I guess I would advise, let's see what happens in February if the project starts.
Sure, okay. All right, moving on to agenda item 6C, we have a request of the schools to locate $45,000 from ARPA for COVID air filters.
Yes.
In these little white machines that we see down here.
Yes, the little white machines. So I do want to amend that request and lower the request. Joe Fahey, the Director of Facilities, first of all, it's a school request because we're running the filters through the school department, so we get a better price because we buy in volume, but it's also for all of our town buildings. So these filters in these little white machines need to be replaced 4 times a year. So Joe, trying to be proactive, we just replaced the filters in Town Hall and some of our town buildings. The schools are due to be replaced, and they don't have the filters. And you also need bulbs. The bulbs only need to be replaced every 2 years. So initially, Joe had a quote from one vendor to provide 2, and that's what was submitted to us. Over the last week, Joe said, I think I might be able to get a better price. Let me go out to a different vendor that's now available to us. Went out to a different vendor and got a reduced price for the filters. So the reduced price is now, it's $29,000 and change, so I would just round it to $30,000. That will provide us with, I believe, a full year's worth of filters for all the schools, all of the town properties, and bulbs as well for 2 years. And then the filters alone, if you break it down, are about $12,000. So in a year from now, you probably need another $12,000 to get more filters. You know, how long do these need to stay in place? I don't think we should plan 4 years out. I don't know that we'll need them, but right now we do need them. They're important. It's air circulation. Our systems here aren't good for air circulation. So we respectfully would request your approval of that. And again, I want to thank the school department. Again, we're lucky here. We have a great partnership with the school department. And we're able to do some joint purchasing and some joint projects together because they're willing to work with us and they're helpful to us. So I want to thank them because they did a lot of work on this.
All right. Thank you. And do we have any questions from board members? Yes, sir?
So when do we make a decision that it becomes operating costs? You know, like in 2 years, do we say, oh, it's gonna be another 2 years? I just don't wanna have to allocate money every year on this.
Agreed.
So,
I don't know how long we're going to have to keep them in place. We know for the next year, the school department wants to keep them in place. I don't know that they'll keep them in place 2 years from now. I don't know if there'll still be the public health need 2 years from now for that. We are looking at upgrades to some of our HVAC systems that we're coming in to request. I think on the 26th, we were going to request, rather than money to actually do the upgrades on HVAC, we're going to request money for a study to see what exactly it is we need to do. So that study may come out that you don't need to have these anymore if you upgrade certain systems. So we don't want to go too long-term on that, but I agree with you at a certain point, you know, and I've had that conversation. If it becomes something that we're going to have here forever, then it has to go in the operating budget. But right now, we think it's still a reflection of COVID.
Thank you.
And we really use 4 filters per year, but with the schools being shut down, a portion of the time, they can probably save on one.
Yeah, they could
Yep.
extend it a little bit for
Yep.
some of the classrooms. The machines run all 24/7 though. So the question is, I don't know how often, if they can shut them down, if people are still using the classrooms at a certain point. They're not effective if you turn them off.
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, and do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for the 30,000, is that what we, okay, of ARPA funds for the COVID air filters.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So just to be clear, it's 30, up to 30?
Up to 30.
Yeah, because I think the quote that came in was 28 and change, and then there were shipping costs that we just estimated we could get in under the 30. So thank you. Much appreciated.
And we are moving to select board member items. And 8A, discussion on potential creation of a student member of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Carpenter?
I don't have anything else. I did ask Sharon to send out additional information that I had found, so really just waiting to hear back from board members what your thoughts are. If this is something you want to go forward, that's fine. What ideas do you have? The likelihood is I will not be here when that person takes their seat, but I'll be happy to see that that's a job well done. However, if the board has reservations and would like to continue to study it long after I'm gone, then that's obviously the board's choice.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the board members? Well, let me pose it this way. Mr. Carpenter's looking for feedback. Do we have any feedback from Mr. Carpenter on?
My biggest concern is I don't wanna own this. I already volunteered for another committee, which I haven't set up yet, so.
That's a fair point. Chairman Liberty, you can put a lot of things on who's outgoing, and it's just hard for somebody to, pick up that torch and keep it going. But at the same time, I think there is you're not leaving tomorrow. So, are we gonna move this forward, or do we wanna table it further? I mean, I think Mr. Carpenter really wants a decision made on this at some point soon. I know that we had some information that was provided to us in terms of work permits are needed. I think it was capped at 3 hours a week, which would be well within the parameters.
So I find it valuable. I'm not gonna volunteer someone else's time to take that lead. I think anytime we can engage the youth, the young community, I think it's great.
I'm not looking for a committee to do this, I'm looking for ideas as to how you want it set up, essentially. I don't think we need a committee for this. I mean, I have my ideas, which I'm happy to share in an email to the board members. But again, this is going to be owned by you, not by me. So, and whoever comes after us, hopefully, this will be a successful program. I'm happy to go to the school committee, ask them what their thoughts are. I think that's the next logical step. If the board is okay with me doing that, I would happily contact Chair Harrington and ask to go in and just also would like their input in the process because they already have a process. And I would also like to hear their input as to whether they view this as valuable or not. Because I think we really need their buy-in to make this a successful program.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that would be the next logical step, would be to present to the school committee, and within the parameters that we saw. And I'm sure we can email, if you want to send us your ideas that you have for, how the structure would look, then we could probably keep that as a talking point for next meeting. I don't believe you'd be able to get in front of school committee before next meeting. Possible, actually.
They meet on Wednesdays, but I didn't memorize their calendar.
Okay. All right, I think, is the board in agreement that we would start moving in that direction?
Yeah, I think it would be good.
So I would make a motion that the board allow me to go forward on that basis. That would be in the form of a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is a vote. All right, and moving on to the final matter, we have to discuss and vote on a budget transfer of funds for the annual volunteer appreciation event. Again, Mr. Carpenter.
So this is another ask. We have done this for most of my time on the board, but again, this is a brand-new board. So my first question is, does the board want to continue doing this? It does take time and coordination of town staff, their invitations sent out. We usually gather in this room. We ask the chair and the town manager, who, depending on when we do it, might be the man in the tie, but hopefully Mrs. Jacobson will have time to come back and visit with everybody if we move forward with the spring date. My thought was to take the money out of the Selectmen's salary account due to Mr. Liberty's vacancy and that vacancy not being filled. It just seemed we've already appropriated to request town administration to go to the finance committee on our behalf and ask them to transfer $800 to cover the expenses. So my initial question to the board is, do we want to go forward with this?
I can speak for myself in saying I'm not necessarily in support of this one, only because we do the holiday event in which all of the town, volunteers, all town employees are invited to that event. And it is my understanding, well, I know firsthand, Tristan had told me, but it's a lot of work. So I don't want to throw a lot more work on people's plates. I'm very much with Mr. Chambers in terms of, how stretched thin I am. So again, I think this would be duplicating efforts when we already have something in place. Again, that's just my own opinion on the matter. Do we have any other positions?
This request was for budget, right? Not hours or volunteer.
To put the money aside even to carry forward holding this.
Okay, so there's
This
still
event.
the planning work involved.
Yeah.
I can assure you I can actually do it. I actually have everything on my computer. So it is, again, not an ask for anybody to, other than I would hope that all the board members would show up for that. Obviously, we have had issues where the chair has been out of town in previous years, so then Mrs. Ruffley, we would hope, would step in the breach and represent the board and be a welcoming presence, as the town manager has done in the past, and Chair Goodrich did it multiple times during her time. So there's really there is work, which we will have to coordinate with both the chair and the town manager and the assistant town manager, because we don't know if we're going to hold it, but the timing of it, but it's pretty much a turnkey thing as far as we are putting a burden on the staff to set up the room. It's not really very difficult for me to put, coverings on tables and things like that. putting together a program, which is pretty basic. To be perfectly honest with you, it's just an opportunity for past and present members of boards to come who would not necessarily mix with each other on a given day, so. But again,
Do we know what an expected cost would be, or are we just looking to spend the remaining money from?
my request would be $800.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Through the chair, is this well attended? Is it better attended than the holiday party?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because the holiday party is open to the full-time staff, and I would say that actually volunteers don't get to come to, some do. I mean, I've run into 6 or 7 during the holiday party, but it's held during the day, which is appropriate and is always wonderful. If you have a chance, it's well worth taking some time off from work to come and get to do it. But yes, we've had, I don't know, I would say 30, 40 people at the outset. I mean, it's certainly not capacity room, 150, but I would say we've had between 20 and 35, I would say, at any given time.
Would it be better to open up the holiday, like add the extra funds to the holiday party and open it up to volunteers? And then you're just one?
We do
or you
actually
just-
invite the board and commission members already to the holiday.
Okay.
Yep, they were invited.
Yeah, I know in the past I've been invited, but couldn't attend because of the time. So, I'm assuming, Mr. Carver, you're thinking this one's after hours?
Yeah, this is always held in the evening. One Monday it has been in the past, a Monday that we don't meet. So we don't wrap it into the meeting. So it's addition to, not during. But,
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we transfer $800 to fund the annual volunteer appreciation event. Mr. Carpenter will do the organizing.
Mr. Chairman, that authority lies with the Finance Committee. That would have to, the transfer would have to, so it would be a request to bring it to the Finance
we
Committee.
would request town administration to
So-
bring it for us.
I guess the decision rests with the Finance Committee. If they do not approve the funds, then we wouldn't have the financial resources to consider this event.
Okay. So it's more of a transmission.
So I think there'd have to be like a two-step process.
Okay.
If the board considers moving this forward to the Finance Committee.
I make a motion that we ask the finance committee to transfer $800 to the fund for annual volunteer appreciation.
Okay, and
Second.
we have a vote and a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, I'm not gonna roll call this. I'm gonna roll call this, excuse me. Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ruffey?
Yes.
And the chair is a yes, it is a vote.
Great, thank you.
And do we have any edits or concerns on the meeting minutes of August 22nd, 2022? We'll accept them as written. Thank you, Sharon. And do I have a motion?
So moved that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is a vote. Thanks, guys.